All right, Patreon community. This is always for you. We always like to think of you all as our special supporters, and we want to make this practice, make Armor Down really useful for all of you who have just made the effort to support us month after month, year after year. New stuff's coming, new websites coming, new cushion designs are coming, new everything. It's all kind of coming. And so we're going to be updating our price structure. It's going to be much different than it was before. Anyway, I wanted to go into a deeper dive into the 21st stanza of The Art of Peace, largely because I think it speaks to what we do when we become present and why it's such a useful kind of skill set to really bring to every moment you can of your life. So, 21st stanza of The Art of Peace. As soon as you concern yourself with the good and bad of your fellows, you create an opening in your heart for maliciousness to enter. Testing, competing with, and criticizing others weaken and defeat you. So, if you've ever watched your own mind, I see with my kids, the mind is constantly grasping on things it likes and pushing away from things it doesn't like. So if you're attached to your mind's behavior, you have to contend with the fact that your mind is operating at levels beyond your awareness. It's operating at levels of culture, it's operating at levels of expectation, it's operating at levels of bias. It's operating at all these different levels. And so if you get fixated on this is good, this is right, and this is bad, this is wrong, you get fixated on that as an idea, then your capacity to be with the situation and kind of have the greatest flexibility to kind of operate. If you're wanting that greater flexibility, you have to look at the situation from the perspective of non-judgment. It's kind of like building a structure. If you build a structure based off of your biases or your interpretations or your fantasy, you're building that structure off of something that's not necessarily yours. You're building it off of kind of influence. You're building it off of bias. You're building it off of like cultural zeitgeist. What's the latest thing? And so it's not going to have the kind of integrity or the kind of stability that you want. So what you want to facilitate is this layer of emptiness. That's non-judgment. That's Tao. That's Wei. That's Zen. That's presence. That's the layer that you want everything to be kind of built on top of. From that layer, you can participate with presence. And it's presence based off of emptiness, not presence based off of expectation, bias, whatever. Because it's based off of emptiness, it has the opportunity to go in any direction. And if you can keep that presence about you into things, especially conflict, there's always an opening. Always, always, always an opening. It's the most fascinating thing I've ever experienced in my whole life. If you can stay present, you can keep that layer of emptiness alive inside of conflict, you can actually kind of neuter the conflict. You can take the energy out of the conflict. You can take the fire out of the conflict. You don't add to it. You don't take away from it. You're just with it. And it seems like it's kind of like, wait a minute, you gotta pick a side. You gotta this. What you're doing when you're participating with your own mind, what you're doing when you're practicing being present, is you're practicing this relationship to your thoughts that kind of reorganizes yourself to understand that you have thoughts. You aren't your thoughts. You have thoughts. You aren't your thoughts. So what you're building on top of is that chooser. In Taoist texts, they call it the dark enigma. This is the part of you that is not, it's not clearly defined. You can't quite grasp it. You can only really experience it. And me just trying to give it language is kind of ridiculous. So that non-judgment part has been studied for thousands of years. This isn't new, but this piece right there, you build on top of that, then you have all options available to you. Now, what we do when we practice 4 bells is we practice one, kind of recognizing bell one, that your nervous system, which is highly trained, you have kind of from the warrior community at the very least, you have this emphasis on security. You have to tame that. If you don't tame it, your mind can get caught in these threat loops, and it's not the part of your mind that is kind of the fullest capacity. It's the part of your mind that's just fixated on survival. You have to tame that part. That's bell one. Once you tame that part, you get into the body. Now, the reason why you get into the body, and especially in the context of conflict, if something triggers you in a situation, like someone says something terrible or someone says something that's just really reprehensible, and you kind of get it, you hear it, your body's going to tense. There's going to be repercussions inside your body. And if you're not aware of those repercussions, you can fall into the kind of the downfall, that you can fall into that without even realizing it. Body tenses up, you get tight, and then all of a sudden your ability to see all this space, even in conflict, disappears. So that's bell two. You got to have that relationship to your body. Bell three is inside of conflict. It's tough. It's hard, right? You've got one person saying this, you got one side saying that, you got the potential of this, you got the potential of that. That's breath. Now, you may have seen this in your own life, in your own self. You just kind of breathe, 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 breathe. You settle in. You start with yourself. You say to your own nervous system through your breath, it's okay. There's going to be high points. There's going to be low points. Let's just breathe. Settling into the breath, you can get to a place of open-heartedness. So this is where the advantage comes in. There's a lot out there that's like, once you get past your identity and once you get past your body, and then it's emptiness, right? It's the void, right? No. It's love. Okay. What's out there? The tissue that connects all of existence is love. It's love. So when you get to that place of emptiness, okay, it's love. It's radical acceptance. It's deep participation, even with the darkness, because what it represents is suffering. What you're interacting with conflict is suffering. And whether the person who's kind of driving the conflict realizes it or not, there is an element of suffering. There's an element of fight. There's an element of defense. There's an element of armor. That's suffering. Regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the why, regardless of who did this or who did that, it's suffering. And so if you can come to that space with open-heartedness, it doesn't mean you agree. It doesn't mean you leave. It doesn't mean you pussyfoot around. It just means you're absolutely, solidly empty. Then that suffering has a kind of like a release valve. Now you got to find it. You got to find what it is. And sometimes it's hard to find what it is. But that's why we practice, right? But there is a release valve in there. And the 99% of the time, you're not going to know it beforehand. It's going to be something that you perceive inside the moment when you engage with the conflict. And that's where you become your most powerful self. If you can break through someone else's armor, if you can break through the armor that kind of maintains the conflict, and you can create that down, that kind of then things can change in a way that's kind of really, really neat. It's hard to see beforehand. Very hard to see beforehand. And that's why we practice. So let's do that. All right. Get yourself settled in. Going through 4 bells, baby. Look for sound, temperature, light and shadow, smell, taste. Now, see if you can kind of notice your thoughts. You can kind of see that layer of thinking. Let's go to bell two. Now, from that layer, go into your ground. Feel your body, starting with where you're seated. Notice the sensation of touching the ground. Now, notice thought layer, see it, and then move away from thought layer into the sensations at the base of your spine. Maybe throw a little movement into the base of your spine. From the base of your spine, come up to your core. Is it getting easier to move your awareness from that thought layer to part of your body? That's what's cool about the practice. It's what's cool about the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. As you settle deeper, thoughts become less thick, more translucent. Heart space. The softening takes place at the layer of the soft tissue. So when you're thinking softening at heart space, it's the soft tissue, it's the fascia, it's the kind of the stuff that moves around and in between and over all of the parts that make up your body. And so if you soften, you might feel these little pops, these little releases, these little let goes that your body kind of turns on automatically. You armor up without even thinking about it. And when you kind of let that go. When you armor down, you might feel these different little things kind of letting go. And I've been doing this for years now, so often when I get to a chunk heart space, I can release and feel these little boop, 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 these little pops. Now come into the throat space. Just notice throat. It's it's just so much going on at the throat. Just be present with your throat. Feel the air moving up and down. Maybe take a swallow, notice that. And top of the head. Top of the head, top of the spine. Feel that length of the spine. You can kind of go in two directions here over the course of a lifetime. You can forget about your spine completely and get better and better and better at forgetting about your spine. Or you can become more and more and more familiar with your spine, really participating with your posture as just a default. That's what's so cool about our brains is we become what we do. An active spine, a lithe spine, an alive spine, a spine that's engaged and interactive. It's up to you to create that. Let's go bell 3. Breath. Deep breathing for 10 rounds. After the 10 rounds of deep breathing, just kind of settle into the quiet of your internal world. Maybe just stay here for as long as you like. When I get quiet enough, I like to just feel my heart moving. Feel free to stay here and go into fourth bell on your own or follow me. Now turn that thought layer on and focus it on gratitude. Give it free rein. Let that thought layer go into any direction it wants for gratitude. Maybe it's a narrative. Maybe it's imagery. But link the thoughts to your heart and just open that kind of channel. Open that space between the thought patterns and the heartbeat patterns. Put the two together through your presence. Now you can add to it by either focusing your presence on the beating of your heart and envisioning each beat sending out gratitude or sending in gratitude. Or you can focus on the narrative, the imagery, and really kind of visualize, see in your thoughts what you're grateful for. But spend time in this kind of circle of love and gratitude and really zero in on it, focus on it, make it real in this moment as fully as you can. When you're ready to finish, take your 2 rounds of breath. Inhale, second exhale, you're done. And we practice in the morning because the day hasn't started yet. You know, if there's any opportunity to kind of get to the guts, right? Get to that base layer, that layer of emptiness, the morning's the time to do it. So you establish that layer, right? And then you take that with you into the day. And you take what you take with you is you take this kind of, it's this kind of neutralizing force that means you can go anywhere, right? You can go into any situation with this kind of foundation of emptiness, right? Anything that comes into emptiness will be met with emptiness. And so it's just spacious. You're taking this layer of spaciousness into everything you do. And it's a gift that you're bringing to your day. So we practice in the morning. So, That's what I'm going to think about today. I'm going to take this gift that I cultivated right now into my day. And so there's going to be spaciousness around anything that I engage with, hopefully. Right? There's plenty of times I get triggered and all of a sudden the emptiness disappears and I'm like, oh, I got to fix this today. Nonetheless, take this with you, right? So, all right. Have a great rest of your day. Um, Keep an eye out for all the cool stuff that's coming to the Armor Down space, and we'll see you later.